This is the Playbook. All right, welcome to the Playbook. Today we have an exciting guest. We have Coach Glenn Burnett from Galax High School, who is the Galax girls varsity basketball coach and the Galax girls varsity softball coach. Today he's going to discuss some of the things such as program development, how he develops a program, some of his coaching strategies, and just how he develops young athletes. It's a great pod. Hope you give it a listen, and here it is. All right, I'd like to welcome Coach Glenn Burnett from the Galax Lady Tide girls basketball program to the podcast today. How you doing, Glenn?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Good. So we just want to get in and ask you to tell us about yourself and kind of how you got into coaching.
Well, I've been coaching for about 20 years. Started when I was student teaching at George Wythe High School. I asked if I could coach anything. I really wanted to help with baseball, and he came to me later and said, hey, I really need a girls softball coach. We're starting a JV program. I said, that's great. I know nothing about softball. So I started there and started working with them, and it was really cool. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I actually coach softball as well now with basketball, and so I've been doing both for about 20 years on and off. So I've really enjoyed it. It's been a good ride.
That's amazing. When did you decide, like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is, I want to coach. That's what I want my career to look like.
Well, I think I naively thought that I was just going to be this super cool teacher. And I was a really good teacher, and I worked at teaching a lot. But I said, I'll coach because I really wanted to get a job. And but I don't think I understood what coaches really did. And so my first 3 or 4 years, I coached 3 sports for back to back. And as I continued to learn what it really took to be a coach, really embraced it, and it was kind of a grind, and then started to like it. And then, the idea of someone calling you coach is just a really cool thing. People don't forget who you are, and you can have a really positive impact in their life. So the more I did it, the more I liked it. I'm kind of a junkie. I don't know what else I can do. So that's just what I do.
This was my first year as a basketball coach. So I'm sort of getting what you were talking about earlier on in your career, as far as, really figuring out what coaches do on a day-to-day basis. Now, I've got my own opinions on these things, but, from your perspective, what are the best parts of coaching? And then also, what are the most difficult parts of being a coach?
Yeah, I think the best parts are just not necessarily the wins, but the relationships. And the more that you're around kids, and the more that you help them and you see them succeed, and you get to know them on such a personal level, because you're the one helping them get better at their skill. You're the one helping them in their classes. You're the one helping them decide on what college to go to. The negative aspects are, of course, they're high school students, and they think sometimes when they're not playing that it's personal. And so you're trying to find a balance of winning and losing, performance and non-performance, and helping those kids decide and realize their value even if they don't play as much. And so sometimes along the way, people get really mad at you, and they become bitter at you because they take it personal. And that's hard, because if you're really a people person and you want to, and you like people, but those are the tough decisions that coaches have to make. The other things that, when I first started coaching and kind of growing up in coaching, we grinded. We did the laundry. We did all the things the head coach said. We mopped the floors. We swept the floors. Things have changed a lot now. Young coaches kind of come in now sometimes, and they're head coaches by the time they're 24, 25. And I remember when I first started, a realistic goal for me is I just wanted to be a head varsity coach, but it was going to take some time. And so by the time I was 28, I became a head coach, which back then was really, you'd put in some time. I had really been coaching 5-6 years by then. And so that's changed a lot. But but there is just so many more positives that outweigh the negatives. So you just have to kind of focus on that and keep moving on.
All right. So, I'm your assistant coach, and I don't know if everybody knows that or not, but I've known that you've been around for a long time. I thought maybe more than 20 years, one of those things. But,
Yeah.
Building a program, you're now doing this for the second time. And, how do you build a program, and, how do you develop those players and figure those things out?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. Each program that I've taken over had a quality coach before me. One of the things I did is I focused on that there was some things that were not broke, in the program, and there was some things that I still like, and there's some things that we're still going to do. And so I was very fortunate to replace two really coaching legends in a lot of ways. The guy that I replaced at Patrick County was second in all-time wins, but his wife was first. And so, and then of course I go to Galax, and Coach Mayo is won over 400 games, and you go to replace him. And so one of the things that we talked about, the work ethic was already established, and so that really helped a lot. The other thing that I think has really helped build the program is sometimes style of play. And I know people don't want to talk about X's and O's and this and that, but offensively, I've always allowed our teams to have a little bit of freedom, or at least convince them that they have it, right? And so, and if you can convince them that they they can take a shot, and you're not going to flip out if they miss it, and so you try to get them just to play free. I think that was a lot of what we do with that. The next thing is, hey, we're a big family, and we want the family to have all the same things. I know it sounds silly, but when you coach girls, they want the apparel, they want the nice shoes. And so you really go out of your way to try to provide those things for them, because kids, they still want to look good on the court, whether they're playing well or not. And so those are some small things. And then the next thing, of course, which we're missing out now because of the pandemic, is just that summer bonding. The summer is a great time to get everybody together, to get everybody out of the gym, and only the people that are in the gym are the ones that are performing. And it's a great chance to get better. And so, we just try to give a lot of high fives. I'm real big into that. I try to say hey to my players as they walk down the hall. I tell them if I have a problem, I'll talk to them about it. We just try to create this open door, open family atmosphere where we work really hard. And then on the flip side of that, I've always been one of those, I try to convince them that we work harder than everybody else. Now, obviously, programs work really hard. We lost to some teams that worked really hard this year. And we were probably putting as much time in as they were. They were just more talented than us. But the idea is that no one outworks us. And I think when you create that on the defensive end, then the kids in the program, as far as that goes, they really buy into everything that they do. They believe in themselves. And so those are some things that have helped me. But I've been really fortunate. I've just had some really good players, some really good assistant coaches, and some smart people.
Not talking about me, though. That's the key.
I am talking about you.
So
I am talking about you.
The other question I have is, this year's obviously different with the pandemic and everything like that going on, but developing players, because you've developed players at, Patrick County, and you've worked to develop players in Galax as well. And what's your philosophy on how you develop your players?
Well, I think one of the big keys is starting early. The quicker you get to a kid, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. At Patrick, we were starting to talk to kids in 7th grade, 6th grade. We held elementary camps. That's when everybody really come in and hit the gyms and wanted to be part of programs. And, we're having 30, 40 kids in the gym that are underage at that time, compared to, playing high school ball or middle school ball. And so you're developing those habits, and you're showing them things in your program that's going to make them successful, and building that relationship. I really think that's the key to player development. Players want to know, it's not that you know everything, it's that you care about them. Right. And so the more that you care about them, I think they start to believe you can be wrong. You can obviously be wrong in teaching them something. And then and they wouldn't know the difference, but the idea is that they believe in you, and that you continue to, build player development that way. And then obviously the fundamentals. I mean, I think a lot of people have got caught up in it's a scheme, it's an offensive set, it's a we run this type of defense, it's this or that, but it's really not. It's fundamentals and concepts, and so if we are fundamentally better than the person in front of us, then we're going to be pretty good. You know, I obviously work with Coach Dixon, and the weight room is very important to us as far as player development. And, you know, and he just says, you know, all I have to do is be better than the person in front of me, you know. And so we are trying to build kids that can guard, you know, at their position, the person in front of them, you know, and, or, you know, and as far as player development, you know, some kids develop really good. Some kids, you know, unfortunately in high school ball get no better than they currently were as a sophomore. And one of the reasons that takes place is after your sophomore year, obviously you get your license. Kids do not work as hard, don't put the time in. You know, I see Cliff here. I know that I've heard stories of Cliff being in the gym, you know, early in the morning, late at night. This is before and after practice, you know, getting up those kinds of shots. You know, you're not going to see the majority of high school players doing that. It doesn't make them a bad player. It doesn't make them a bad person. It's just that their drive is different. And so player development is really built on drive. But, you know, we spend a lot of time on player development, a lot of time on fundamentals, and then just try to focus on the other things that we can control. But obviously, I think the earlier you get them, the better off you are. And really been fortunate, had some young players when they were young and built that relationship with them. They started calling me coach when they were in third grade at Patrick County, you know, and they knew me as coach all the way through, you know, and so, you know, you just continue to work with that. And the same thing at Galax, we've been developing the middle school team. And if I see my middle schoolers, I took them and coached them in the AAU this winter. I was double dipping, coaching varsity and JV, helping a little bit with JV, and coaching the middle school AAU and their middle school team, and just trying to build that relationship. And so I think that goes the longest way. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that I've sort of found the same thing. Obviously, I'm the youngest coach in the group here, but, you know, as far as it's not really what you know or what you don't know. If they don't trust you, it doesn't really matter. So I definitely have seen the developing relationships, and I also have seen that, you know, again, that you can't really force them to do anything at this age. I mean, it's got to, like you were talking about, the drive. It's got to be within them for them to want to do that. I think, you know, as you get to, if you're playing, you know, high level basketball, Division I, you know, then you get into, everything's mandatory. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. You know, they're paying you to come to school, you know, through a scholarship, so that you're going to do what they ask you to do. And so I guess transitioning from that, we're talking about philosophies, and you were talking about developing players. This is, again, a thing that I've struggled with as a first-year coach, playing time. And I know, I think nobody wants to really talk about it just because of the, you know, everything that goes into that. But I really want to know, you know, what's your philosophy on that, and not just like outside of the game, but in-game substitution. How would you go about doing that? You know, as a basketball coach, for instance, how would you go about doing that?
You know, one of the things that I learned early on, and I know this sounds strange because it sounds like I'm passing the buck, but I developed my assistant coaches and talked to them about what I wanted in game. And then I allowed them freely to make some decisions for me. And then, of course, I'll have final say on some of those decisions and who goes in and who doesn't. Playing time is such an interesting thing. And, you know, I try to convince kids that if you're playing 30 seconds or a minute, you know, the value of what you can do in your 30 seconds or your minute or your 2 minutes in a game can really alter or change the game, you know. And the last thing, you know, sometimes I think with high school playing time, it's your ability to guard, you know, and it's not all and try not to do too much, you know, because kids get out there and they get nervous, you know. And I'm thinking, if you can just dribble the ball and take care of it, if you can just defend, right? If you can just defend and let the game come to you, you will enjoy the game. And so you want the kids when they come in to realize the value. We had a player last year who really was a kid that she might, depending on matchups, she might play a little bit, some game more others. But, you know, the idea for her is that she was always ready to play. And I think you just have to build kids into that, hey, look, I need you ready. I need you ready to play. And then we get into playing and, closer into the games. Obviously, I think about things like I try to hold timeouts as a coach until the end of the game because I know that I played, probably the majority of my bench for the first 3 quarters. But in the fourth quarter, I might only play 6, 7 kids depending on how close we are. And to try to use those timeouts as an opportunity to give you kids a break, give them a rest, and that way we can get them back out there and kind of close the deal. In single A basketball, we were fortunate. We had, 11, 12 kids, something like that. And that's a lot, and it was a lot for single A. But, typically, you're counting on 7, 8 kids to kind of help you in your program. And it's not that you're upset with the others, but they're not going to contribute as much. And so I think you just try to find a balance, and you also try to find some moments where a kid can excel. There has been some moments where I put in a kid at a certain time, and Coach Bucket would be like, "How did you know that? How did you know that they could do that?" And I was like, "Well, I just had seen that in practice that I think they can do this for us. Whether it be rebound against this person, whether it be defend this person a certain way." And so you try to create that in practice so that the kids are prepared. But it's never easy, and it's never the same. Playing time, game to game, the decisions you make are never the same. It's kind of a fluid situation. I think, for me, as I've got older, I just kind of set back a lot. I stand away from the court a little bit, like towards the end, so that I can see everything and try to take it in without a lot of voices. But having great assistant coaches that help you with substitutions, I think also is really something that they don't get enough credit for. And I've always had 2 guys that have done a really good job at that.
To follow up on what Coach Burnett just said, one of the games in particular, I'm usually responsible for the subs, but one of the games in particular, we were up by like 3 or 4, and we were trying to hold the ball. And we knew we were going to get fouled, and we had a girl on our team who hadn't been in the whole game. And he goes, "Sub her in." And I'm like, "You sure?" I guess she hasn't been in the whole time. He goes, "Yeah, I'm sure." She gets fouled, and no kidding, just drains both free throws. And I was completely astonished. So it was one of those. It was one of those moments where I was like, well, "There you go. That's why I'm not the head coach."
Yeah. Well, that was a situation where the player is a great free throw shooter, and she is a pretty good player. And I just there was, she just didn't get to play as much as she would have liked, I'm sure. But it was a situation where I said to her, I said, "Listen, you're going to go in the game. They're going to foul you, and you're going to make these shots." And she did, and she helped us win the game. And it was really at a crucial time. So yeah, it worked out really well. Sometimes you win in those situations when you make those kind of calls, and then sometimes you're in trouble because of fouls or whatever. And there is no great decision, but sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think Coach Puckett would probably know more about this, but I'm interested to learn. How do you structure your practices? And maybe you've got some things that you do outside of practice as well. What do you do with your kids?
All right, I'll start talking about what we do outside of practice.
Okay.
For right now, what we do is we lift. During the regular school year, we lift 4 days a week, and then we have a 5th day that's agilities. So what they do during agilities day is they really just do their basketball workout. So in the gym, we have a basketball workout that's on the wall there, and our kids are getting, and they'll probably shoot again another day, maybe shoot free throws, shoot threes one day. So on their own, they are trying to better themselves by getting some shots up, pre or post weightlifting workout, which has really been a little helpful. We do shoot-arounds before games. Those are another way that we try to get up shots. It's a little organized. It's not as strictly organized as maybe a practice, but there is certain things that they're required to do. And so any chance you can get up extra shots, obviously, the better. Practice has really changed for me a little bit. Obviously, it's very organized. We have it by time slots. I learned that from a the guy that I started working for, I actually replaced at Patrick County, a guy by the name of Wendell Terry, a very smart man, won a lot of basketball games. And he would, in the old days, 20 years ago, he would handwrite his practice schedule, spend the night handwriting it, and it was by times. And then he would hand it to the assistant, which was never me. I was his JV and 8th grade coach. But they would have to type it for him, right, and give it to put it on the wall. We post them so the kids know what we're doing. And, of course, every coach has a copy of the practice schedule. And those are some small things that I still do, that I still like to do. Make sure it's all posted early. Kids know what to expect that day and so forth. One of the things that I think helps today's generation is they're all fixed on time. And what I mean by that is they want to know on Wednesday what you're going to do on Friday, next Friday in some cases, right? And so I try to balance a practice schedule based on games that we're playing, how long I think we should practice the following day. And if there's any way I can maybe sometimes practice in the morning so that I can give them that afternoon off and then until the afternoon of the next game. So that is a way to kind of give your kids a break in between. I'm sure you dealt with a little bit of that in college, some ways to save their legs. Sometimes towards the end of the season, I practice less, less amount of time and really focus on fundamentals and then more. But as far as the structure of a practice schedule, typically we do fundamentals at the start. And we really kind of get after it those first 30 minutes. I believe in conditioning with the basketball. I don't believe in just running lines and suicides and 33s and all these different things. And while all those people, still do those things, there's nothing wrong with those things. And that's just not how I try to function. It's kind of a brain game. But if I can convince the kids that they're not running suicides and lines, but I'm really pushing and really out there vocal and, on the whistle and here we go and here we go, I'm really winning in the conditioning battle of getting our kids conditioned. And then one of the things I learned from Coach Mayo at Galax, which I really like, is that we do shooting in the middle of practice. And I had never done that. I had always done shooting at the end of practice. And that is something that I took from him. And we still do that. And I'm not going to change from that. And what I like about that is we go really hard, really push ourselves physically, get a little 3-minute break, right? 3 or 4 minute break, free throws, water, like typical coaches. And then we go into 4 to 5 shooting drill stations. And we shoot threes. We make sure we shoot threes every day. That's a big thing. Even though we're not a great 3-point shooting team, we did make more than I thought we would throughout the year. And I think that comes from just shooting, and so we chart all of that. And it's available for the kids to look at. That's something that I've started doing is that. And then towards the end of practice, we try to calm down a little bit, kind of ramp back down, and we kind of go into we do some play. I'm real big on letting them play full court a little bit for 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes of practice. And then we break down and go into, press breaks and offenses and scouting and some of those things. So you try to have highs and lows in practice now because kids' attention spans, as we are always hearing, are not as good as they used to be. One of the things, I haven't not experienced in practice, and I don't know about you guys at Oak Hill, but music, like people talk about having music at practice, and I could pump in some crowd noise, maybe some parents that don't like me if they want to do that. I just never have really done that. I still think practice is still a time to focus. We do have some distractions at where we teach and where we coach. We have cheerleaders on the balcony and, people walking in and out of the gym. And I've kind of just let that happen because I think kids should still be able to focus during that time and multitask. And this generation can really do that well. And so, but those are some things that when it comes to coaching with practice that I just seem to like. But the middle shooting in the middle of practice, that is something that I will probably stick to. I really like that.
All right, to follow up on that, the fun question that I feel like, fans don't really know. They just see us at games and they're like, oh, they're just saying stuff at random. They have no idea what's actually going on. how much game preparation is involved before each game, and like how you come up with the game plan?
Yeah. Game preparation. I've always said, and I started this at Patrick County, but I'm not that smart. And because I'm not that smart, I'm going to watch you play as many times as I can watch you play. Well, if I have one game tape, I'm going to watch it over and over, 4 or 5 times. If I have 7 game tapes, I'm going to watch them over and over. I'm going to know all the inbounds plays that you run. I'm going to know your offense. I'm going to show the kids a small package of everything that you do, offensively, defensively, special situations, because I believe that you steal points and you steal the game sometimes in those moments in your preparation for a game. We, of course, have kids that watch Huddle, and they don't ever watch enough of it as you would like as a coach. But that they look at some of the stuff too. We send out tape that is all scouted up, X's and O's. Here they move. This is what they do here. This is what they like to do. This is their. I'll show maybe. Sometimes I'll show the same offense that they run 3 or 4 different times, just so that the kids understand, hey, we're going to see this all night, this one set. And so it took a while this year. Our kids didn't understand the amount of detail. We scouted some in the past and we showed them some things, but now they understand how detail oriented we are. Again, part of having a great assistant, watches tons of tape, scouts out everything. Coach Puckett would bring me lists of things that we need to work on. And then really what I would do from that moment is decide how to fix that. So I decided how to manage that and how to show that to the players. So sometimes he would say, well, what about this and that? And I say, hey, that's too much information, and we've got to just show them this small package. But yeah, preparation, I fell asleep many a times in front of a computer, back in the old days, which seems like the old days, but it really wasn't. 10, 12 years ago, I used to drive all over Virginia to get game tape, and it would exchange with people. And, we're talking about sometimes on VHS, and we're talking about sometimes on DVD. And I was burning CDs DVDs at a phenomenal rate at one time. I had a certain burner we used at the school, and I about blew that thing up. So, but we would send tape to each other year round, and I would see teams from far off. I would see them play a lot, and before we even reached the playoffs. So yeah, a lot. Nothing's changed as far as that. So a lot of work, and I think it just helps me. I can call out what they're doing during the game, and the kids, it blows their mind. But I don't know any other way because, again, I just don't feel like I'm very smart. So I have to overload my brain with lots of information.
Makes sense. Well, I mean, you're talking about your game preparation and, everything we've talked about. Obviously, you're very involved in what you do, as you should be. I reflect on my time, as a basketball player throughout my college career and stuff. And, I reflect on the time that I put in. And, we've talked about it becomes a grind, or, you've heard that said before. So, I know I felt this, and I'm interested to see if you've ever felt like there was ever a time that you were thinking, this is it, I can't do this anymore. Time to.
Well, I did take a break after 6 or 7 years at Patrick County. I took a break from coaching in the high school ranks. I was really driven to wind up getting a ministry license and doing some things like that. And, kind of the Lord had kind of told me to go away from that for a while. I still wound up helping coach my kids. And I still had that drive. One of the things I think it helped me realize was just the importance of keeping it simple, and trying to have some fun with these kids. And again, it kind of gave me that fire to get back going again. There's always going to be moments where you are just fed up, but to be honest with you, even though there was some tough times, and I could share a whole podcast full of those, or 4, right? But the problem is it's all the success that you do have. And it's all the you see, I still see former players sharing things online, Facebook memories, things of that nature, of all these events and all these things that they did that at the time I was focused on more about the winning side of it for a certain reason, but the experiences that they had have just made so much difference. So, there is frustration. It does take a lot of time. The older you get, the more you don't there's some times where you can't feel like you can grind as much. And you just don't bounce back the day after of, a game like you should. I still enjoy it, still have a fire for it. I'm probably not going to be like Coach K, not going to be doing it, headed into my 80s, but I still think, that I can get after it and still do it at a high level. I also think, and this is just an opinion, but it's hard to be anywhere for 10, 12 years and have success. Coach Brown was there forever at Galax, and Coach Terry was there for a while, and at Patrick County, he had been there 16 years, I think, before I took over. So I just don't see the longevity of that. I think you have to if you want to be a head coach, you're going to have to bounce around. But I'm hopeful that I can stay at Galax for a while. I think this will be my last chance here, my kind of last ride here to see what happens. But looking at 10 years, that's a long time. But trying to put that in and then see what happens.
Well, following up on that, you kind of answered the question already, but where do you find that drive? Because I know as a coach, most people don't understand this, but if you have a family or something like that, it can be extremely difficult sometimes because it's just such a chaotic schedule. So where do you find that drive from?
Well, one of the things that I've always done is I've always tried to do the work after the kids are in bed. I try to make sure when I go home, I'm home, and that's hard as a coach. Wasn't able always to do that, but you just try to find a balance. There's only certain things you can control. The more you're in the game, you're going to figure that out, right? There's no sense in worrying about something that can only be determined at game time, And so whether it be a matchup or whether it be whatever, worrying about another team, whether or not their injured star player is going to play or any of that stuff, all that stuff's uncontrollable. And so I think the more you do it, you just find a balance, and then you just kind of move on from there. But family time for me is a big deal. My kids come to the games. I look at my wife in the stands. I ain't gonna say that I don't. You want your family's approval. My girls are a big part of our program. They come down and get hugs from all the players, and so there's a sense of that kind of gives you a little bit of ease. So I think you just have to embrace them, and they have to be willing to be a part of it. And I'm just very fortunate. I've had a coach's wife. She's a great one. She's she's a real defender of her husband, whether I deserve it or not. And you just have to be thankful for that. And then my kids, my middle daughter especially, she just thinks there's nothing like me coaching, so that's what they know. And that's what they enjoy. So it is what it is.
I think you sort of touched on this, and again, as we were talking about, you might have answered it throughout our podcast. But I would like to hear again, what is a typical day for you as the coach during the season? What does a typical day look like? Let's say it's on game day, or you're leading up to a big game. What does that look like for you?
All right. Yeah. A typical day for me is, getting to school, 15, 20 minutes early, reaching out to some players. You go in, you open up the locker room for them. They're going to go work out. You're trying to check in with them back and forth. You're making sure your laundry's done. You're making sure all the game stuff's done. You're double checking game tape. I'll go back and review all the preparation, all the stuff that I've done in my downtime when I'm not teaching class.
Right.
And so you're teaching class, and then you're trying to find 5 or 10 minutes here or there to check in. Sometimes I go down at lunch, talk to a couple of the younger players, and touch base with them and tell them I'm proud of them, in the JV team and stuff of that nature. And then by 7th period, I try to find some time where I'm just to myself. and try to find a little time and to relax. And then obviously we'll have walkthroughs, pregame meal. Kids all go out and eat, and we'll do the walkthroughs and go through all the preparation again one more time. Let them shoot a little bit, try to keep them loose as we can before the game starts. And then usually what I have become accustomed to is about 30 minutes before the arrival of teams, I usually go to my room. And I know that sounds crazy, but I go into my room, I'll make a coffee, right? I know that sounds crazy to have a coffee now before games, but I sit down. Usually Coach Bucket comes up and joins me. And we just talk about things outside of basketball. I make a big point to talk about something else. And then that just kind of settles me. I go and talk to the head coach and the other team, do those kinds of things, and just try to enjoy the ride, enjoy the moment. I've told Coach Puckett and some of my assistants in the past, they would be so nervous for big games. And I say, listen, it's only a big game because we have worked so hard to get to this point, And so let's enjoy this, right? Let's enjoy this. Let's be loose. Let's have a lot of fun. There'll be enough hard decisions to make during the game. And so I think those are kind of things that I try to do. Try not to get too worked up. Try to stay pretty balanced. The work, as Coach Dixon says, the work is done, right, on game day. So the work is done, and it's just time to relax and just see what happens when the lights come on.
But now everybody knows why you're fired up on the sideline. That coffee right beforehand. Sometimes it's like 2 coffees. Don't lie.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I used to actually drink Monsters before games as an assistant.
Oh goodness.
And Coca-Cola, of course, right? But but I try to be be alert. Let's just say that.
So the next question I got for you is what is something that you've learned from either other coaches you've coached with or someone you've coached against?
Something I have learned from a coach. Well, plenty. I pay attention to their mannerisms a lot. One of the things when you do a lot of scouting is you kind of know what certain coaches are going to do. And so I've learned to realize what the tendencies are of some coaches and take and actually steal a lot of things that I like. Sometimes I think people are inadvertently doing some things. We had some offensive actions this year that I just kind of stole off tape from other coaches. And it's not even a play that they run. They didn't even realize, I think, that they were doing it and the action that it was creating. And so, like, for example, switch, right, that we ran, which was a little play to get an ISO on the block. And so I take some of that stuff. You watch how other coaches carry themselves and so forth and so on. But I've been doing it for a long time. And so, I don't know. I guess one of the things I pay attention to is how they act in timeouts. What's going to cause this coach to call a timeout? There's some things like that I'm keenly aware of.
The one thing I want to ask you is, since you said you've been doing this for 20 years now, what has changed since you started coaching?
Wow. That's a loaded question. I will tell you that when I first started, everything was program oriented philosophy, meaning that, we ran a secondary break on the sideline, a right sideline break. And we ran a motion offense with screen downs and pins and curls and flex and continuous offensive movement that really would maybe create a shot. All great offenses, all very effective. You still use that stuff now and be effective. But everything was kind of a little bit more robotic, I guess, than the game is now. The game now is built on concepts. I remember when I became a head coach, one of the first things we did, and hopefully you'll have him on your podcast, is Dave Davis was at Pfeiffer and at Newberry, and they ran what they called run to the rim. It was 4 out, 1 in, secondary break, really loose, shoot the 3 in the corner, ball screen at the top, drive to the hole. And when I started putting that in, and we've ran that now at Galax too, some things are still able to be, still part of the game, and rim is one of those things that we run that's still part of the game. But the 4 out, 1 in. But a lot of that stuff was so different to our kids because they were almost robotic. And so the game has changed now to where, we teach concepts. And I remind Coach Puckett a lot of that, that a lot. And so right now the game offensively especially is, we're trying to create what I call offensive action, right? And I know most people might not call that, but I'm just trying to create actions, right? Movements. I'm not going to tell you that we're going to get the ball on the block, right? But we're gonna maybe have a little blur screen, right? We're maybe cross each other and get that kind of action just to create some kind of movement to get the defense to move. And so I think a lot of the game has changed in that way. I know a lot of college coaches are big on 4 out, 1 in and shooting the three, and so that's changed a lot. Halfway through my 20 years, we started using the ball screen a lot. And a lot of people at that time were not in our district, in our region, we're not really using the ball screen. And so we began to use the ball screen a lot, and that caused a lot of problems. And so over time, some things are still true, right? The ball screen's still there. We still use that a lot. 4 out, 1 in is still great. Passing, moving the ball. My big thing now is, the extra pass, trying to get the defense to rotate, off actions and trying to stay away from double teams, but a lot of little quick hitters, but also the ability to play off of those, right? So again, actions, right? Not necessarily plays, but I call them actions. And I say that a lot to our kids. So that's changed a lot. Now saying that, if I was going to start a program that was really low and not very developed and struggled, I would go back to what I did 20 years ago. You move here, you screen there, you move here, and I would try to get them into a basketball type of atmosphere, but outside of that, if you've already have that established, you just kind of teach them to play and go off of that. So I think that those are some of the biggest changes.
I would say, off of that too, I'm sure you're talking about things that are changing throughout your time as a coach. What is, and it can be a game and it can also be a memory, it could be both if you want. What's one of your favorite memories from coaching, and or what is a game that you always remember? What that looks like for you?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I've been fortunate enough to be a head coach in 5 region championships and have won 2 of those. At Patrick, we won back-to-back. Those were some great moments. We won the region in 2010 on our home court, and the kids actually got to cut the nets down, right, which is an old school thought, and they don't do that a lot now in high school sports. They don't allow you to, but that was a pretty special moment for our kids. Some games that I really enjoyed coaching, anytime we played George Witt this year, I enjoyed that the most. I really like the big games, the games that you kind of squeeze one out here or there and learn how to win. But we was fortunate enough to coach. I was fortunate enough to coach at Salem Civic Center in the state quarterfinals and beat Northside to get to the Final Four to play at VCU at Patrick County in 2010. That was a special moment. We had some times during that game where we had to run some stuff that we hadn't ran since camp, and we started running that offensively, and it helped us win the game. And so those are some moments. We won a last-second game off a play that we run a lot called 11 seconds. We still run this now at Galax. And so we had practiced this with this group for 3 or 4 years. We'd only ran it once. We'd got a shot, didn't win the game. And we were in a district tournament championship. And sure enough, she calls timeout, or we call timeout one, and she lines up exactly the way that she shouldn't have lined up as a coach. And we win the game off of this basically. It's supposed to be 11 seconds to take it to basically be able to win. And we scored in like 7 seconds. And so we were worried that she was going to have too much time on the clock to score. But we wound up winning. So those are some moments, some cool things, you've prepared for. You've put some things in your back pocket, and you've been able to win. But, I've been fortunate. I've been blessed. I haven't been a head coach, but for, I think, 7 years. But in that time, won a lot of games and a lot of championships at different levels. And so obviously coached, some younger sports too. And so I've just had a lot of good moments. I've been really blessed and really, really fortunate.
All right, so we're at the end now. So the last question that we always ask is something that people don't know about you. And I'm not referring to like a first aid kit or anything like that, but you can maybe tell that story too for a good laugh.
Yeah. Probably one of the things people don't realize is I actually coached a year of football, believe it or not, at Patrick County.
What plays did you use again?
They made me the offensive coordinator, and I told the football coach, I was like, that was back in the day when Madden had just started, and I was like, look, man. I was like, we got to – and the kid, one of the players says, we need to have a bootleg play, coach. And I said, okay. And so I went to the offensive coordinator on the varsity team who wound up being a very successful head coach there at Patrick. And I said, look, man, I need some kind of bootleg. I said, like Madden, right? Like the guy rolls out, and so he would draw up stuff. And then obviously we had some pretty good players at that time and I was able to do that. So probably the most unfortunate thing was in that season is they had tackled us in the end zone for a safety. And so we had a head coach, and I just did offense. And the head coach was a young guy, and he was just kind of different. Out there headbutting kids and doing some silly things back in the day that you wouldn't do. And I said, Coach, we have to punt the ball, right? And I meant that it was a free kick, right? So you wouldn't kick it off of a tee, but you would have to punt it, And I was talking to the quarterback about some things, and I heard him yell, punt team, right? And I didn't know what was going on. And they went out there and lined up and snapped it. So they just lined up like special teams and snapped it and free kicked it out into the field. And my friends, and I wasn't even the head coach, and my friends who I'd all coached with for years, because I was just trying to help out because there was a need, they rode me about that and never said anything to the head coach about it. They blamed it all on me, right? And so for years, it was like the punt team was out there. And when I looked up, I said, oh, my gosh, right, what are they doing? So that's one. There's been plenty of funny moments. I did have to sit on a first aid kit, as Coach Puckett said, when I was an assistant in softball. And a good friend of mine is now the head softball coach at Fairham University. He does a great job. And so he was my mentor. He was the guy that I worked under him. And so I just started coaching softball, and he had just come out with those buckets with the lid on them, with the seat. And we just had one bucket, and I said, man, I need a bucket to sit on or something. Like during the game, I was going to sit beside of him. I was charting pitches and trying to take in all these things that he was doing because he was super smart. And he said, you can sit on that first aid kit. And the first aid kit was only 8 inches off the ground. And so considering I'm a short guy, I sat on that first aid kit for an entire season, right? And so when I became a head coach, one of the first things I did was go get me a bucket to sit on, right? But yeah, I mean, you just had a lot of fun moments. We do joke around a lot more than people realize. Coach Puckett's a great asset, and the kids really appreciate him because he's just down to earth, and we joke around with him a lot. And there's always some moments for laughter. Definitely, I think it's important to have that. The kids are going to really always enjoy the fun times.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we've got for you. We appreciate you being on, Coach. Thanks for taking the time out of your day and being a part of our podcast. I think that's about all we got, right, Coach Puckett?
That's it. Thank you, Coach, and I wish the best of luck to your season, considering I'm part of it too. So,
yeah. Well, we'll try to figure out some way to overcome it. Hey, I appreciate you guys having me on.